shot and killed behind the wheel. A vehicle riddled with bullets. A victim sitting in the driver's seat. The plaza now behind police tape in yet another shocking outburst of public violence in Toronto. Good evening. The shooters took off and they're still out there.
At least a dozen shots fired in the middle of the day in an area packed with businesses and people. CTV's Sean Leithong is live at the scene tonight near Finch Avenue West and Westmore Drive. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, you can see the vehicle over my left shoulder with the orange piece covering the passenger side window. That's the vehicle where the victim's body remains at this time. Now, I was able to take a look and count at least 12 bullet holes to the windshield and to the driver's side of this vehicle. We know it's a white Ford Expedition with Quebec plates. Now, I just want to speak to the recklessness of this shooting. You can see all the cars that are around me right now. This shooting happened at 12:45 in the afternoon. All these cars were in the parking lot because this parking lot has been closed off. Now, we've got some video we want to show you that was taken from Twitter. Police arriving on the scene very shortly after the shooting. You can see them actually trying to break into the passenger side of the car, obviously trying to render aid to the person who eventually died in the front seat of this car. Now, I mentioned how many bullet holes we could see, some in the windshield, some in the passenger side. What police have said is that the suspects did flee, or suspected flee, in a two-door car going west down Finch. Now, this plaza is at the corner of Highway 27 and Finch. It's been closed off for some time. We are waiting to hear from homicide to try and get some more details as to just how this happened and where they're going from here. There were a number of witnesses, obviously, in the plaza at the time. Many of them we spoke to did not want to speak on camera. We did speak to one woman who heard the shooting. Here's what she had to say.
It sounded like maybe about 8. I could be wrong because this person just sounded like bang on our door. Like really loud bang, but afterward then I hear bang, 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 bang. Because the police was there within minutes. I was shocked after the shots. The police were there like, wow, scary. It is sad what's happening. It is so sad.
Now, we mentioned how many bullet holes we could see in the vehicle. There were also a number of shell casings and evidence markers along the ground. Like I said, we're waiting to hear from homicide detectives. They have taken over the investigation. The forensic unit is investigating. If we do get to talk to detectives, we'll try and bring you that in the hour. But for now, I'll throw it back to you. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong.
Appreciate it, Sean. Thank you. Next to another incident that's leaving the whole city asking why. A woman in her 70s shot in the face with a pellet gun.
The attack completely random. That woman simply out for her morning walk when she was approached from behind. CTV's Janice Golding is live near McLevin and Nielsen Road in Scarborough with more. Janice.
Hi, Nathan. Yes, police say this woman normally walks in this neighborhood every morning, and she was not expecting what happened to her.
She had blood in her hands and in her face on this side, on the left side of the...
Crossing guard Furman Villanueva says he was just about to start lunch hour duty yesterday when a woman covered in blood approached him pleading for help.
She told me that she was shot by somebody there, but she didn't know who shot her. She saw, because after shooting her, the guy ran away.
Police say the 76-year-old was out for a morning stroll when she was approached from behind. As the suspect walked past, the victim was shot several times in the face with a pellet gun.
I heard somebody screaming, and because I live near school, I thought maybe the kids were passing at the street here.
Residents on Hupfield Trail near McLevin say the incident, which took place in broad daylight, has shaken their sense of safety.
I don't feel, I feel shaken up.
Yeah, I feel upset and nervous, and because I'm in a wheelchair.
I feel very bad, like very upset, like we cannot go outside without alone.
Police have released these images of a suspect.
Their face is covered by a black face covering, so you really can't see a lot. They're wearing a long gray, black puffy jacket and what appears to be black track pants. Are hoping with the images that were released, the stature of the suspect, what they were wearing might be familiar to somebody.
The first corner is there.
Villanueva says the victim didn't want him to call police. She just wanted to go home.
She looked afraid. She looked panicking like that.
So Villanueva says he drove the woman to a residence a few blocks away.
I was also a bit scared. Something like that's happening here without any provocation. Something happening like that.
About a half hour later, emergency responders were called to the scene, and the woman was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Now, police say this appears to have been a random attack, so they're asking people in the neighborhood to stay aware of their surroundings. Reporting live, I'm Janice Golding. Now back to Nathan.
All right. Thank you, Janice. No injuries, but a whole lot of drama with an explosion and fire at a downtown encampment this morning. This happening at Clarence Square, that's near Spadina and Wellington. Witnesses say they saw smoke and flames, and the fire involved a propane tank. The fire investigation team is handling the case.
A warning tonight from public health officials in York Region as they investigate a new confirmed case of measles. The update from public health indicates the patient is a 30-year-old man, and unlike the 3 other cases confirmed recently here in Ontario, he did not travel abroad, nor did he have any contact with anyone who's ill. Officials have released a list of potential exposure locations and advice for potential contacts. You can find the full details at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
Still ahead, an official prescription for national pharmacare, the federal plan, and the patients who will benefit most.
More news in a moment, but first, here's a live look outside on this Thursday evening, feeling a little more like February as we keep riding this temperature roller coaster, although February is just about done. We're leaping into March tomorrow. Jess, what's happening weather-wise?
We get a reprieve from some of the cold. Although it has been a very seasonal day today, a very seasonal end to the month of February, we are just feeling the chill because we're not used to it, right? It's been so mild throughout almost the entire winter season. A few light kind of lake effect flurries lingering in and around the GTA, but the bulk of that wrapped up through the late morning, early afternoon. Temperature-wise, sitting around -4. It feels like -11. A little cooler the further east you go, but again, this is seasonal for the first time in a while, and really the last time before we step into what is a brand new month tomorrow. But through the island and over towards Pearson, between -4, -5 tonight, a very seasonal low. We should be around -6, but even with the wind chill, we're still in that relatively normal range. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including a warm-up on the way as we enter the month of March. Michelle, send things back over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next to the cost concerns over the FIFA World Cup.
With the tournament still 2 years away, many are asking if the price tag will only keep rising. CTV's Mike Walker is live with more. Mike.
Well, Nathan, Michelle, Mayor Olivia Chow says the city must move forward with the cost of hosting the FIFA World Cup, despite it being a decision made by her predecessor, John Tory. And the consensus among many members of the mayor's executive committee today is that the city has to find other revenue tools to offset the soaring cost. An extra match, safety and security plus inflation are driving up the cost to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. That city staff projects now totals $380 million.
I'm saddled with it. Would I want to see $380 million being spent on it? No.
Olivia Chow stating, unlike her predecessor, John Tory, she wouldn't have signed the deal without confirming funding contributions from other levels of government. But despite the $80 million increase, the mayor says council must embrace the responsibility of hosting 6 soccer matches.
Let's try to control the cost as much as we can and make the whole FIFA World Cup process transparent.
The province has committed $97 million, but this week indicated it won't provide a penny more. What remains unclear is how much funding the federal government will provide.
It's important that the federal government comes forward to help us with the funding of FIFA. Toronto is a world-class city and needs to be able to host world-class events.
While the benefit to Toronto's GDP is an estimated $392 million, the city is only projected to gain just $3 million in tax revenue, compared to the province and Ottawa, which stand to earn between $50 and $70 million.
All other levels of government are able to reap the benefits but not invest as much as we are. So it's a bad deal. It shouldn't have been signed.
We need to move ahead. We need to get the stadium prepared.
Senior city staff were seeking to have the authority to execute procurement decisions and bypass council's approval in order to meet FIFA's timelines. But that was rejected by the mayor's executive committee today.
I think that there needs to be even more accountability and oversight rather than less.
In the meantime, city staff say they are exploring all revenue tools to help offset the soaring costs.
Short-term implementation of an additional municipal accommodation tax leading up to the games. Private sector sponsorship.
Corporate Ontario, corporate Toronto's got to step up too, because they're the big beneficiaries of all this activity.
The mayor pledging a line-by-line review of the spending.
To set up committee to see if we could get more private sector contribution.
Vowing the city will meet FIFA's deadlines before world-class soccer arrives in June 2026. Now, the city is hoping to find out in the upcoming months exactly how much funding Ottawa will provide. In the meantime, the city manager is expected to report back to councillors in the third quarter of this year on a revenue plan. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. And staying with sports, Toronto Maple Leafs head coach Sheldon Keefe is being ordered to pay up. Keefe has been dealt a $25,000 fine for unprofessional conduct directed at the officials. It happened during the third period as the Leafs took on the Golden Knights here at home on February 27th. Keefe was ejected from the game after disputing a penalty to Mitch Marner. The fine money will go to the NHL Foundation.
This is the last day for Toronto homeowners to declare the occupancy status of their properties to avoid the city's vacant home tax. Owners who leave their properties vacant for more than 6 months are subject to the tax. Every homeowner is required to declare their occupancy status by the end of February or pay a $21 fee. Homeowners who fail to make a declaration will have their properties deemed vacant and receive notifications by the end of March. Declarations can be made through the city's online portal. Canada's one step closer to setting up a universal pharmacare system.
The federal health minister introduced some long-awaited legislation on that file today, fulfilling a commitment by the Liberals to the NDP. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver has the details.
So this is my bag that I have to take everywhere I go. It has all my diabetes supplies in it.
12-year-old Raina Smith is constantly doing a carefully calculated dance.
I would press confirm and then give myself insulin.
Checking and rechecking her sugar levels to keep her type 1 diabetes in check.
The main medication I have to take is insulin, but to take the insulin, I have to have an insulin pump. I have to have a continuous glucose monitoring system. I have to get finger pricks sometimes, and there's a lot of different medications.
Raina's lucky her parents have health insurance, but soon families like hers shouldn't have to worry about out-of-pocket expenses.
She's really smart. I'm worried about her future. I'm worried about where she's going to have to look for a job based on benefits instead of what she's good at, instead of helping others or doing what she wants.
Mr. Holland, seconded by Ms. Sudds, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act Respecting Pharmacare.
Today, the Liberals, with cooperation from the NDP, tabled a bill that paves the way for a national pharmacare program that's expected to cover dozens of diabetes medications and contraceptives.
This is historic. This is the dream of our party since the conception of our party.
The bill, C-46, provides a framework for crucial negotiations with the provinces and territories. Those who sign on will get money from Ottawa to cover diabetes medications and contraceptives. But already, Alberta and Quebec have signaled they want to opt out, calling this provincial jurisdiction.
I'm very optimistic we'll find a solution, and I'm very optimistic this is a plan we can deliver across the country.
While there are tough negotiations ahead and no timeline for when Canadians will start seeing their medications paid for, those in the healthcare sector say the coverage will go a long way.
Reducing that risk of pregnancy means that they are able then to finish their education or keep on working in our employment. It also means that they have that choice. They are not beholden to somebody else's drug plan or they're being able to afford it.
The legislation provides no cost estimate, but when pressed today, the health minister said it could be around $1.5 billion. Annie Bergeron-Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
Just a day after the federal government announced a review of its program to support Indigenous contractors, CTV News has learned the head of a company that prompted the review is an employee of the Department of National Defense. David Yeo is the CEO of Dalian Enterprises, which received $7.9 million for its work on the ArriveCan COVID-19 screening app. The Defense Department confirms Yeo has been suspended. Sources tell CTV News he's employed on the civilian side. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre called for an immediate police investigation as he pushes for a wider inquiry on the ArriveCan controversy.
The Premier remains in the hot seat tonight, despite being away from Queen's Park.
The opposition demanding answers over the appointment of former Ford staffers onto a panel which chooses Ontario's judges. CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris has more.
With the Premier away from his seat in the legislature, heads were a little cooler through question period, but the opposition still wants answers on the appointment of two of Doug Ford's former staffers to a panel that picks judges.
How will appointing a handgun lobbyist to the Judicial Appointments Committee help reduce gun crime?
While the Premier has talked about wanting to appoint like-minded judges,
the committee makes recommendations
based on those who apply.
The Attorney General defends both the system of choosing judges and those doing the choosing.
There are good people, smart people, people who are looking for individuals that understand victims' issues, individuals that understand cultural perspectives, individuals that understand community service.
But advocacy group Democracy Watch says it's a system that needs a reset.
The changes the Ford government made to the judicial appointments process give the Attorney General too much power to make partisan political appointments, and that's unconstitutional, and that's why we're challenging it in court.
The idea of a lawsuit was floated a few years ago, then revived this week when the Premier said this.
I'm not going to appoint some NDP or some Liberal. I've made it very clear where I stand with judges.
These statements and actions by Ford over the last week and the appointments recently just make it so clear that it's a partisan political system.
Rather than a fair, independent one.
And that threatens law enforcement and fairness for anyone who's involved in a court case.
Conacher says it will take a few weeks to pull the court case together. He's consulting with other groups that have raised concerns about political interference to see if they want to sign on. At Queen's Park, Siobhan Morris, CTV News.
We have some breaking news to share with you. Canada's 18th Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney, has died. Mulroney was Prime Minister from 1984 to 1993. His daughter, Caroline Mulroney, announcing on X not long ago, says he died peacefully and surrounded by family. He was 84 years old. He was born in Quebec. He was a lawyer, much respected across this country. And this news is just coming out now, so we are awaiting certainly more reaction to this developing story, and we will be following it through the course of the hour. Again, Brian Mulroney has passed away at the age of 84.
The Toronto Public Library says it's continuing to make progress in its recovery from a devastating cyber attack. The library says it has checked in more than 1 million books since bringing in its catalog back online 2 weeks ago. TPL says the process is labor intensive and has involved hundreds of staff members, but is going smoothly. The catalog was knocked offline in October following a hack that crippled the library's systems, disabled its website for months, and led to a data breach. The full extent has yet to be determined.
Statistics Canada is sharing its latest GDP readings, taking the pulse of our country's economy. The agency said GDP grew at an annualized rate of 1% in the fourth quarter of 2023. High interest rates weighed on that growth, but weren't enough to push Canada into a recession. Still, analysts said economic growth last year rose at its slowest pace since 2016, not including 2020. The Bank of Canada has signaled rate cuts could be on the horizon this year, with its next decision coming next week.
Quebec's Court of Appeal has ruled the province's secularism law is constitutional. The law, better known as Bill 21, was passed in 2019. It declares the province is a secular state and prohibits anyone in public positions of authority, like teachers, judges, and police officers, from wearing religious symbols on the job. Today's ruling also overturned an earlier decision that said English school boards were exempt from the law. It said Quebec's use of the notwithstanding clause overrode any potential infringements of fundamental rights.
Also today, the federal government announced it's once again going to require visas from Mexican citizens who want to visit Canada.
We have seen exponential growth in asylum claims, particularly from Mexican nationals in the last year. This is something that Cabinet has been seized up for some months. Given the relationship that we have with Mexico, it is something that could not be taken precipitously.
The entry rules are less stringent for Mexican citizens who have a valid U.S. visa or held a Canadian visa in the past 10 years. Mexican officials say the country regrets this decision and reserves the right to act in reciprocity.
With immigration said to be a key focus in this year's U.S. presidential election, Joe Biden and Donald Trump were both in Texas today for separate visits to the southern border.
And my predecessor's in Eagle Pass today. So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill.
Biden met with Border Patrol officials and criticized Trump-allied Republicans for voting down additional funding for asylum reforms. Joined by Texas's governor, Trump said Biden and his administration have made it too easy for newcomers, including potential criminals, to cross the border.
3 years ago, we had the most secure border in history. Brandon was saying it. The general was saying it. We had the most secure border, and people weren't coming because they knew they weren't going to get in. And we weren't promising free education, free medical, free everything. I mean, all the promises that are made, no wonder they come.
While Democrats say the proposed bipartisan border deal would have meant some progress in addressing the migration crisis, Trump and allied Republicans say it wouldn't have been enough.
While the current and former U.S. presidents were at the border, lawmakers in Washington spent the day trying to avoid a government shutdown.
On this vote, the yeas are 320, the nays are 99. Two-thirds being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended, the bill is passed, and without objection,
the Republican-controlled House passed a stopgap funding bill with the support of Democrats. The Democratic-controlled Senate is expected to vote this evening. Congressional leaders indicated they were passing short-term funding to keep federal agencies running while broader budget talks continue.
Also in Washington, ongoing questions after a major move by the U.S. Supreme Court. On Wednesday, the justices said they will decide whether former President Donald Trump can be tried on charges of interfering with the 2020 presidential election. He denies wrongdoing, but lower courts have rejected his claims of immunity. Even if it rules against Trump, legal analysts say the top court's decision to hear the case could mean there's no time for him to be tried before this year's presidential vote.
We turn now to the latest in the Israel-Hamas war, and we want to warn you some disturbing images and details are ahead.
More than 100 Palestinians were killed in an incident today in northern Gaza, linked to the distribution of badly needed humanitarian aid. Eyewitnesses say Israeli troops fired on a large crowd of Palestinians who were trying to pull food from an aid convoy in Gaza City. An Israeli source said troops opened fire on several people in the crowd they thought posed a threat to them, with military officials also blaming some of the deaths on the chaos that ensued.
Thousands of Gazans dispensed upon the trucks. Some began violently pushing and even trampling other Gazans to death, looting the humanitarian supplies. The unfortunate incident resulted in dozens of Gazans killed and injured.
The United Nations Secretary General condemned the incident and called for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and the release of all hostages. Canada's Foreign Minister weighed in this afternoon.
I think this is a nightmare. I think the violence must stop. I think civilians can not be targeted. And at the end of the day, we need to make sure that international aid is sent into Gaza and that people are protected when they go and get that aid that they need to survive.
Before his visit to Texas today, U.S. President Joe Biden said while the deaths in Gaza are investigated, the incident likely lessens the chance of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Israeli officials, meantime, say 2 people were killed in a shooting attack at a fuel station in the occupied West Bank. The military said the attacker who opened fire was also killed.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning of a nuclear response if NATO troops are sent to Ukraine.
Putin
made the comment in apparent reference to French President Emmanuel Macron's statement earlier this week that the future deployment of Western ground troops to Ukraine should not be ruled out. In a State of the Union address ahead of next month's presidential election, Putin warned that that would lead to, quote, tragic consequences for the countries involved.
Also in Russia, there was a heavy police presence around the Moscow cemetery where late opposition leader Alexei Navalny is set to be laid to rest tomorrow. The 47-year-old died a few weeks ago in a penal colony. Western leaders say Vladimir Putin is ultimately responsible for his death, although an exact cause hasn't been announced.
At least one person has been killed by massive wildfires burning through the Texas Panhandle.
It just started really fast. Flames were going everywhere. And by the time we got back, well, there was nothing left.
Residents in the city of Canadian, near the Oklahoma border, got their first glimpse of the damage on Wednesday. The Smokehouse Creek fire is already the largest in Texas's history. It sits at more than 3,400 square kilometers, and that's about 2/3 the size of Prince Edward Island.
Preparations continue in Paris for the 2024 Olympic Games, and France's president is expressing confidence the Seine River will be cleaned up in time for competition.
Ah bah comment, ouais. Il y a eu des engagements pris. Mais moi, oui, j'irai.
Asked if he would take a dip in the famously dirty Seine River once it's cleaned up, Macron said he would. His comments came as he inaugurated the 2024 Olympic Village.
Coming up, he just ran the fastest indoor 400 meters ever on the planet. We catch up with Von Teen Christopher Morales-Williams, who says he almost didn't run the race because he was not feeling well.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, auto theft is a huge problem, which is why some insurance companies are telling customers to install anti-theft tracking devices. Some companies pay for them, but others won't. And if you don't install one, your rates could go up. I'll have that story just ahead.
After a wild end to the winter season, the meteorological start to spring begins tomorrow. This goes more so based off of temperature patterns, but the astronomical start to the spring season doesn't begin until the 19th, and that's when we see the Earth's position move just a little bit. Coming up, we'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including the first few days of March, to help you plan the days ahead. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
Insurance companies have seen an increase of more than 300% in auto thefts over the past 5 years, costing them billions of dollars in losses.
It's why more companies are demanding owners of vehicles at high risk of being stolen install tracking devices. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Nathan and Michelle. Some customers were told last year they must install tracking devices on their vehicles, but their insurance company would pay for them. But now some companies are telling clients they must pay for the devices or their rates will go up.
My car sits in the garage 90% of the time, in a locked garage.
Elaine Goldsmith of Newmarket has a Honda Accord and was recently told it's considered at high risk of being stolen. In a letter from her insurance company, she was told an additional $500 high theft risk premium will be applied to the 2021 Honda Accord when your policy renews. She can avoid the increase by paying for and installing the tag anti-theft system, but Goldsmith says her car is leased and she plans to turn it in within the next year.
By the time I turn this car in and get another one, I'm going to have to do the same thing. That's $600 in the hole for me.
Arwinder Kelsey was told last year he must install the tag anti-theft system on his truck, but his insurance company agreed to pay for it.
I might as well get it installed because I don't see any other option.
Goldsmith feels if her insurance company wants the device installed, they should cover the cost.
If they want me to put this in, I want them to pay for it.
Her insurance company, Bel Air Direct, told CTV News, instead of redistributing the costs of installing tag to all our customers, we recommend those who own a car at risk install the best protection on the market.
This is a national crisis and certainly an epidemic here in Ontario.
The Insurance Bureau of Canada says companies are trying to reduce auto theft, and the tracking devices lead to the recovery of stolen vehicles. Some insurers pay for the system, others may subsidize it. If you lease, you need to check your contract before one is installed.
They should contact their leasing company to determine if there are any financial incentives available in doing so, and to also ensure that there are no restrictions.
Goldsmith is frustrated that despite having a clean driving record, her insurance continually goes up.
No claims, no infractions, no tickets. It feels unfair. It feels very unfair.
And before buying a vehicle, you should check to see if it's at risk of being stolen. Call your insurance company in advance because there could be big differences in premiums and you may need to install a tracking device. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, turning to the forecast, we are ending the month on a cold note, the way it should be.
I guess for February, here's that February weather for the very final day. And with the wind and with the fact that we've made this wild swing, it felt extra cold.
It did. And it was kind of the perfect end, I think, to the winter season, having it actually feel kind of like winter for the first time. I mean, just to think, yesterday we saw 16 degrees. It's still hard to kind of fathom. But overall, it is going to get really nice as we settle into March. Weather is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train. Now, we saw lots of beautiful sunshine early on this morning, a few leftover snow squalls, but now it is dark, the sun has set, but we are getting closer and closer within the next few weeks to the sun setting after 7 p.m. Some pretty exciting stuff, right? Temperature-wise right now, we're at -5. It feels like -13. We're not too far from the low for the rest of the evening, and we're right in that seasonal kind of sweet spot. Through northern Ontario, it is still pretty chilly. Eastern Ontario, much the same. But through Chatham-Kent, they're already experiencing the warm-up that we will see tomorrow. As we head through the overnight, pretty close to that seasonal norm, around -6 is where we should be. We'll be at -7, feeling like -10. East of us, they're still holding on to those minus double digits. Lows in addition to those wind chills, so it's still pretty chilly. But heading into the day tomorrow, we had 10s across the board the other day. Now it's lucky number 7 for most people as we head in towards the first day of March. Not a lot in the way of active weather. We'll see a warm front kind of move its way in. High pressure as well, making for a really beautiful start to the spring season, the meteorological start of the spring season. And we're holding on to that warmth as we head into the weekend as well. No real cloud cover to deal with through tonight. Just a few light clouds out there. Friday morning, you'll need your sunglasses from start to finish. Really, it's going to be a beautiful and very sunny day. It's as we get into Friday night, we watch for a bit of a system to make its way in, bringing showers kind of through midnight into the early morning hours on your Saturday through to about 9 a.m. and then it's just a regularly cloudy day, but a mild one if you want to get outside and enjoy it. Getting into Sunday, more of the same, cloud cover to start our day, and then we'll see that kind of break up as we head into the afternoon. Now, temperature-wise, again, we went from 16 down to temperatures feeling close to the -20s with the wind chill, and now we're back up to 8 degrees as we head into the day tomorrow. We hold on to that warmth into the evening as well, and through the weekend, despite it not being a brilliantly sunny one, we hold on to some really, really pleasant conditions. The cloud cover does break up a little into the second half of our Sunday, and then stepping into Monday for the first full week of March, back up to 13 degrees for that high, 7 for the low, really, really warm. Getting in towards Tuesday, a bit of a cool down in the evening, but overall, a beautiful start to March. Nathan.
All right. Thank you, Jess. Well, are you enjoying this leap day? Coming up, why a longer February means extra pay or even free labor, depending on how you get paid. The human resources kerfuffle and the reason we do this every 4 years.
On this rarest of dates, February 29th, a new organization is being launched to help Canadians with rare diseases.
As our health reporter Pauline Chan tells us, rare illnesses affect 1 in every 12 Canadians, meaning they're really not so rare.
It's been a long battle for Maddie Van Stone and her family. She was diagnosed at 8 months with cystic fibrosis, the most common fatal genetic disease affecting young Canadians. They fought for access to medications, and on this World Rare Diseases Day, they were marching in Ottawa.
And I'm still here fighting today because I'm fortunate to be on a modulator, but a lot of patients aren't.
Maddie's medication has been like a cure, but from a young age, she's been an advocate for access to such drugs for all.
I've watched a lot of my friends pass away. It is a very progressive and aggressive disease, and that's what scares me the most is you see other patients struggling and passing away, and there are medications that are available.
Because of a lot of bureaucracy, patients aren't seeing everything that Maddie has seen.
It's been almost a year since the federal government promised $1.4 billion for a national rare diseases strategy.
$1.4 billion was actually going to be used for funding drugs and be able to get them for new emerging drugs. So far, we have not seen a single patient get a single penny for a single new treatment.
Durhan Wong-Rieger says 2/3 of Canadians affected by rare diseases are children. And while only a small number of these conditions have treatments available,
things like cellular therapies or gene therapies, which actually can cure a disease. It actually changes, the cause of that disease so that you really will no longer have the disease. So it is paving the way for what we see as the next generation of actually being able to care for diseases.
So drugs to help rare disease patients can actually help in finding treatments for all patients. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
The province says it is making a major investment to build new facilities at the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health. The government is promising more than $1.6 billion to support the design and construction of 2 new buildings at CAMH's Queen West campus. One of the buildings will support the Forensic Mental Health Services program for patients under court-ordered care. The second will combine the center's research, care, education, and policy development facilities.
These new state-of-the-art buildings, this expansion, is a major step forward in improving mental health care here in Toronto and throughout our province. It will advance current research and support new discoveries and developments that will help those living with mental illness.
The new facilities are part of the final phase of CAMH's redevelopment plan.
A new month-long exhibit is set to debut next week honoring the late Honorable David Onley. The exhibit is called Championing Disability Inclusion in Employment, the Legacy of David C. Onley. Organizers say it recognizes Onley's passionate personal dedication to making Ontario fully accessible for everyone and to fostering the creation of equitable employment opportunities for people who have a disability. It opens to the public at Withrow Common Gallery next Friday.
Another blow to Weight Watchers today, which has been struggling to stay relevant in the Ozempic era. Shares of the company plunged after celebrity spokesperson Oprah Winfrey said she's getting ready to leave its board. Winfrey's relationship with Weight Watchers goes back nearly a decade. She recently revealed she was taking popular weight loss drugs as a, quote, maintenance tool.
As the entertainment world mourns the death of comedian Richard Lewis at the age of 76, tributes are pouring in. Lewis was known for his stand-up work and his acting roles over the decades, including HBO's Curb Your Enthusiasm opposite Larry David. David said in a statement about Lewis's death, "Richard and I were born 3 days apart in the same hospital, and for most of my life, he's been like a brother to me. He had the rare combination of being the funniest person and also the sweetest. But today, he made me sob, and for that, I'll never forgive him."
Justin Timberlake is revealing some new details about his upcoming album.
So if I get jealous, I can't help it.
Timberlake has already released the track Jealous from his release next month, Everything I Thought I Was. And now we know he could be joined by his former NSYNC bandmates on at least one track. A fan on TikTok asked the singer to blink twice if that was in the cards, and he posted a video doing just that.
A Canadian filmmaker is set to play a key role at this year's Cannes Film Festival. Xavier Dolan's film Mommy won the Un Certain Regard Prize in 2014. 10 years later, he'll be heading up the jury awarding that prize. Dolan said he was humbled and delighted to be returning to the festival. The main Cannes Festival jury this spring will be led by Barbie director Greta Gerwig.
On the next CP24 Breakfast,
Marie Osmond has been in the entertainment industry for 51 years, and we'll be talking to her about what keeps her going.
CP24 Breakfast up first at 5:30.
Updating our top stories, we are following breaking news this hour. The Right Honourable Brian Mulroney has died at the age of 84. Mulroney was Canada's 18th Prime Minister, leading the country with successive majorities from 1984 to 1993. His daughter Caroline says he died peacefully and surrounded by family.
Remember to keep up to date day and night through our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca, and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
On the markets, the Canadian dollar is essentially unchanged at 73.69. Oil is down 28 cents to 78.26 U.S. a barrel, and the TSX is at 21,363.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Returning to the breaking news this hour, the death of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. CTV News chief political correspondent Vassy Kapelos joins us now. Vassy, this news breaking just over the last 50 minutes or so. We've got a statement from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre calling him one of our greatest statesmen, and we've just heard now on social media from Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, the Prime Minister has just put out a statement of his own, as you mentioned, on social media. He writes, Brian Mulroney loved Canada. I'm devastated to learn of his passing. He never stopped working for Canadians, and he always sought to make this country an even better place to call home. The Prime Minister says, I'll never forget the insights he shared with me over the years. He was generous, tireless, and incredibly passionate. As we mourn his passing, the Prime Minister concludes, and keep his family and friends in our thoughts. Let us also acknowledge and celebrate Mr. Mulroney's role in building the modern, dynamic, and prosperous country we all know today. Just a little addendum as well on that. The Prime Minister, this Prime Minister, had a very close relationship with Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Lots of that prompted by the negotiations to update NAFTA with Donald Trump in the White House at the time. Mr. Mulroney had the ear of Donald Trump, but he also had a vested interest in that agreement staying in place because, of course, he led the negotiations the first time around. And so they cultivated a very close relationship. My understanding is the Prime Minister, this Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, often leaned on Brian Mulroney for advice and counsel. And Mr. Mulroney was very generous, I am told, as well, in providing that.
Bessie, I think a lot of Canadians in learning this news today might be wondering, was he ill? And I know CTV News had reported last year that he was recovering from prostate cancer. Was there a sense that he was sick?
Yes. I mean, he certainly, the cancer that he was battling had taken a physical toll on him. We actually interviewed him for Question Period, the only interview I think he gave on TV while he was undergoing treatment for cancer. And you could certainly see that it had taken somewhat of a physical toll on him. But he, you had no idea mentally. I mean, he was still completely enveloped in what was going on in the world. I think I had spoken to him at the time about the King's coronation and the Queen's passing. And he was very, other than looking a little bit thinner and a little less, a little more tired, he certainly, as soon as he started talking, conveyed that he was very much still in charge of all the things that were going on and informed on, rather, all the things that were going on politically and otherwise. And so, yes, he had been battling cancer. We hadn't heard a lot in the last number of months. I do know from even a few personal conversations with him that the treatments were pretty impactful on him. And that they had, seen a lot of ups and downs, like so many cancer patients across this country undergo. But it does somewhat still come as a surprise, right? Just because he was so vivacious, so engaged, despite the cancer, despite the treatments, it's hard to think of someone that alive not being here.
And this will certainly be a difficult time for Caroline Mulroney and Ben Mulroney and the family. What do you think his legacy will be? I know we'll be reflecting on this in the days ahead leading up to the funeral.
We sure will be. I think a lot of the things he did, because he won such a big majority, actually do have a big impact on this country, particularly free trade, as I mentioned, the acid rain agreement, his position against apartheid, the GST, for worse or for better, has had a big impact on the economy and the fabric of this country. So I think from like a big macro level, that stuff really sticks out. But I also think the way in which he conducted himself outside of politics, he left politics at a pretty divisive time, and people were pretty split on him. But he really evolved, and he spent so much time talking to people and counseling people from all different parties, and I really think that is a big part of his legacy as well.
Thanks for making time for us on short notice. CTV's Vashi Capellos, as we learn, former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney has died at age 84. As we end the newscast today, we are going to end on a bit of a lighter note. An incredible win for a university track athlete from Vaughan who recently broke a world record.
But a technicality might snatch the win out of the international recognition. CTV's Scott Lightfoot has the story.
From Georgia on the outside, he had a nice qualifying.
It was the race of his life, and one he almost didn't even run.
The whole warm-up, I couldn't even stand for most of it. I had to keep taking a break.
After a morning of being violently ill, Christopher Morales-Williams, a sophomore at the University of Georgia and native of Vaughan, was competing in the 400 meters, the Southeastern Conference Indoor Track Championships last weekend.
I was really just thinking about how I wanted to just get this over with. It wasn't even about the results. It was just I wanted to get this over with because I felt horrible that day.
From the inside, Raheem Hales. Getting out to an early lead was all his former track coach needed to see to know Morales-Williams would win.
Once he won the cut-in, I had full confidence. Nobody's going to catch Christopher. There's nobody on the planet that is going to pass Christopher on the second lap. Like, he's incredible.
Morales-Williams' father and family were watching from Canada as well.
There's no words, honestly. There are no words to describe. He just completely
surprised me. When he finished, I can't imagine how 5 people could make so much noise.
But the biggest surprise came after he won the race.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
In a time of 44.49 seconds, the fastest time not only for a college athlete.
We went from he won to what? Like, did he just actually do that?
But a new world record as well.
Everybody's cheering, and I'm like completely in surprise. I was like, how did I even run this?
But a technicality with the starting blocks means the time won't be ratified as an official world record. The 19-year-old seems to be taking it in stride.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me too much because it's still considered the world's fastest time, and it's still ratified for the collegiate record and national record. So it's not that the time isn't real. It's still up there.
For now, his focus is on next weekend's NCAA championships and not the world record.
I don't want that to get in the way. I mean, I didn't plan for this to even happen at first. So, I mean, my goal is just to go there and do my best.
Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
Well, congrats to him. It seems like a record to me.
Sure does. He's fast, and he might be getting faster, too.
We're changing temperatures just as fast, it feels like. Well, maybe not quite that fast, but it is going to be a really kind of big switch up as we head in towards the day tomorrow. So just keep that in mind. It is going to go from those negative temperatures today up to the positive side. Right now, we're sitting in and around -5 for us here in the city. And it feels like -13 getting into the day tomorrow. The kids will need the layers in the morning, but they can probably ditch them into the afternoon. Now, as we settle in towards the first weekend in March, a little soggy on Saturday to get things started, but then it's just a cloudy day and very mild by the time we get to Monday. Back into the teens. It's brief, but it counts. So if you want to get out and enjoy the start of the meteorological spring season, you can do that and then some.
All right. Thank you, Jess. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zarada Allman with her next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and all of us at CTV News, thank you for watching and have a good night.